Hello and welcome back, everyone. My name is Desi, and today I am reviewing episode 11 of season 1, Death Becomes Him, of the popular sitcom Frasier. And this is a little bit heavier than some of the other episodes, although this show does have pretty intense episodes for a sitcom. This one is, I would say, especially heavy, but it does have moments of levity between and lots of one-liners and whatnot. And the focus is on mortality, and there are also a few guest appearances at the end, which I will reference when I finish. Anyways, the opening scene, once again, is at Frasier's apartment. Daphne is basically going on about how she can't find a proper match, how no one has really been interested in her, which is hard to believe because Daphne's very pretty and very witty and funny and charming. And basically, she said her mom tried to match her up with some people when she was young, but they were kind of not masculine enough for her. And Niles hears this, and he's, of course, making this giant swan origami, and he immediately flattens it out. And she's like, "Oh, were you just making a swan?" He's like, "No, it was a B-52," because, of course, Niles has a huge crush on Daphne and is trying anything to look attractive and good in her eyes, even though he's a married man. And then Frasier storms into the living room complaining that Martin has once again skipped his doctor's appointment. And Niles berates Frasier for not ensuring him that he should take Niles or take Martin directly to the doctor's appointment so he won't miss it. And Frasier retorts and is like, "Well, Niles, you're not a very good son. Why don't you take him to the doctor's appointment?" And Niles says he has a fear of abandonment workshop, and I've already been a no-show twice, which is one of the first zingers. Cue the laugh track. Martin, of course, tries to fake that he went to the doctor when he shows up, but he's found out, and he says that he feels fine and that he doesn't want to go to the doctor. This is very typical for the older generation. Like they don't feel sick. Why do they go to the doctor? It's very typical. Frasier suggests his doctor, and of course Martin doesn't want to go because it's a woman. And Niles actually has a very good physician who he was going to recommend, but he forgets because he's imagining Daphne with no clothes in a doctor's waiting room. And so that's one of the other moments of levity is Niles daydreaming about Daphne because he has a big, huge crush on her. The next scene is Frasier and Martin in a waiting room. This is a new set location, albeit a not very impressive one. And Martin is very impatient because the doctor's over half an hour late. He keeps complaining about it until Frasier goes to the receptionist and checks in, and she says that the doctor is returning from Lake Chelan, which both Frasier and the receptionist pronounce as Chelan. Shame on you, show. And also, Lake Chelan is 4 hours from Seattle, so it's not like he's taken a short little drive. I feel like the producers saw something in a magazine and just rolled with it instead of actually did the research, including how to pronounce the name of the lake. So, a little bit of shame, but I get it. The internet wasn't around back then. So, off my soapbox. It turns out that the doctor in the end can't make Martin's appointment because the doctor passed away just before the appointment. And initially, Martin was complaining that the doctor was too good to see him, he was too busy golfing, and then he's immediately like, "Oh, well, I sound like a kind of a jackass because the doctor actually passed away." And the next scene is at the studio where Frasier is just going absolutely crazy, stressing out because apparently the doctor and Frasier are of the same age, and Frasier is worried that he's going to suffer a similar fate. Roz is completely indifferent because Roz is, I guess, in her mid-30s and isn't worried about it. But she is worried about her lover, who is older, having a heart attack and passing out on her during the act of lovemaking. Frasier complains to Roz about her not taking the converse seriously, and he asks her why everything always goes back to her love life, and she responds, "Because I actually have one, Frasier." There's another zinger. Again, they're trying to put in a bit of levity for an intense subject matter, because Frasier is visibly stressed about this, and Roz is just like, "I don't care." We return to Frasier's apartment where Frasier invites Niles and his dad, and they're all having a discussion. And Frasier is trying to get his affairs in order, quote unquote, because he's worried about suddenly passing away and having all of his stuff go to waste and not having people look after it, essentially. They all think he's being ridiculous, and Niles is being especially ridiculous because when he sees Daphne, he says that he informs her he had to skip his gym session and said he could pump iron later, which Frasier looks at him, rolls his eyes, and says, "Pump iron? Niles, you don't even pump your own gas." So there's another zinger, which is true because Niles is a germaphobe and he wouldn't pump his own gas. So very apt and appropriate joke at that time. The next scene is Frasier in the middle of the night. Eddie is looking over him, and Martin comes in the room, and is like, "Frasier, what are you doing?" And Frasier is listening to his own heartbeat because he's paranoid about having a heart attack. And Martin is just like, "You're being absolutely ridiculous about this. You can't always be scared. Like, I was a cop. If I was scared of dying all the time, I would have never been able to do my job properly. I saw people take bullets and, pass right in front of me. And I was scared, but I got over it because I had to do my job." And this doesn't really comfort Frasier much, so he decides that he wants to figure out what caused the doctor to pass away. There must have been something seriously wrong with the doctor. There must be something with his health to cause him to pass away so quickly, so he's determined to find out. And this leads to one of my favorite series of events in the series. He actually shows up at the doctor's home to talk to his widow, but there is a wake or a Jewish Shiva in process. And of course, Frasier doesn't know that the doctor was Jewish, and his cousin who comes to greet him is like, "Wait, you don't know that you say you're the doctor's friend, but you didn't know he was Jewish." So there's a bit of an awkward moment there. And he ends up snooping around once the guy goes back to tending the party, and he sees a covered mirror, and he lifts the veil off of it and sees a mirror, and he's like, "Well, what's all this about?" And then a woman calls him out and is like, "What are you doing snooping around?" And apparently he's like, "Oh, I thought this was some unveiling that was going to happen." She's like, "You're clearly not Jewish, are you?" And I learned something. So during a Jewish wake or a Shiva, the mirrors in the home may be covered. This is a Jewish custom because during the mourning period, the family is not to concern themselves with their own reflection, so there is no need for mirrors. And now you know. So I did not know that. Thank you, show. So the woman who questions Frasier is his aunt and recognizes him due to his radio show. And I just want to point something out because this show often just dunks on Frasier and makes it seem like he's a nobody. Frasier is actually a well-respected celebrity in the community. Niles is always making fun of Frasier for being a quack or whatever, but Frasier is actually well-regarded and well-known, even though he's constantly making a ass out of himself in many situations, including this one. But it is a point of reference. So Frasier begins just like interrogating this poor woman about her nephew's health to the point where it becomes very awkward and he has to stop himself. There is a weeping woman who shows up who brings a cake, and Frasier is like, "Oh, okay, well, he must have really liked sweets. That's why he passed away." And they're like, "No, the doctor was actually a health nut and played basketball and he was a vegetarian, extremely health conscious. It doesn't make any sense why he passed away." And Frasier, of course, is getting more and more like completely unwound about this, and he makes the horribly inappropriate comment of, "My goodness, can somebody check to see if he's actually dead?" And of course, the woman next to him just starts bawling and the aunt and the cousin are just like, that was horrible." I actually cringed really hard during this moment because Frasier is just completely tone deaf and again making an ass out of himself. And he's so like obsessed about his own mortality and finding the reason why the doctor passed away, that he just makes this faux pas and embarrasses himself. So he makes a hasty retreat and finds the widow, who is alone now. And of course, she recognizes him from his show, and she's just like, "Oh, well, that's so sweet of you to show up." And Frasier finally comes clean. It's like, "I really didn't know your husband that well. I'm, I shouldn't be here." But she's like, "You know what? Even though you didn't know him that well, you showed up. That's really sweet of you." And she's very impressed by him. And he actually makes a good impression on her. But he still is ready to leave. And she's just like, "No, no, no, sit down. I recognize you from your show. I have a question for you. I think you could help me." And the woman is clearly distraught about why her husband passed away. And she's trying to find out why, which is the same reason Frasier is there. And eventually Frasier just kind of gets over his paranoia and his sort of manic attitude and just tries to be a good doctor. And he says to her, "I suppose the best thing we can do is live for the little joys and surprises that life affords us. You can't spend your life being obsessed with death." And there's a moment of silence, and then she looks at him and smiles and says, "You're clearly not Jewish, are you?" Which is another moment of levity, because that was actually a very intense statement and profound. And of course, it's completely kind of ruined. Well, not ruined, but the intenseness of the situation is taken away with a laugh track and a zinger. So, again, this is a sitcom. I get why they do it, but it wasn't necessary. It kind of completely. It was a good. I'll read it again. "I suppose the best we can do is live for the little joys and surprises that life affords us. You can't spend your life being obsessed with death." I think that's really profound and good. So, as he's leaving, this woman approaches him, which, again, immersion. Women never approach men. It just doesn't happen. I'm being a little bit facetious, but she approaches him and is like, "I overheard what you said. That was really sweet. And I normally don't do this, and this is a horribly inappropriate place, but I really want to get to know you better. Here's my number." And the ending scene is, again, one of Kelsey Grammer's amazing facial expressions, and this is what I call smug Dr. Crane trademark. And he's just like completely inflated and full of himself because this attractive woman gave him her number, and that's how essentially the episode ends. So in terms of special guests, oh my gosh. Stephanie Dunman, she is not particularly well known. There wasn't a huge amount of high caliber actors in this one, but she is a native to Washington State, which is kind of cool, from Oak Harbor, which is about an hour and a half from Seattle. She's best known for her role in the soap opera Emerald Point NAS and starred in the 8-hour miniseries Mistral's Daughter. She's also appeared in several shows, including Magnum PI, Home Improvement, and Murder, She Wrote. So, a somewhat well-known actor. And the other one of note is June Clamon. She plays the aunt. She is from Saskatchewan, and she was an actress, not particularly well known, but did have a fairly long career and was in guest roles in Beverly Hills 90210, For Richer for Poorer, and Breathing Hard. And she passed away in 2021 at the age of 90, so rest in peace. So, my final thoughts. I thought this one kind of started off slow, but it picked up at the end, and the wake scene or the Shiva scene was excellent. So for that reason, I'll rate this one highly so far, the ones that I've seen, because of just the glorious faux pas that Dr. Crane makes and how just completely tone deaf he is to the situation, and he's there for self-interest, but it later turns into him actually being a good doctor, giving the widow some comfort, and of course getting the woman's number as he walks out. So, anyways, I think that's all for that one. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.